Elul, the final month of the Jewish year, serves as a period of introspection and as an on-ramp into the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Elul Unbound is Judaism Unbound's annual observance of this month. Each week of Elul, we release episodes of Judaism Unbound that explore the month's themes and how we can creatively experiment with this time period to make it as meaningful and liberatory as possible. You can register to participate in Elul Unbound yourself. Join us for Elul Shabbat gatherings throughout this month, engage with Elul-related writing, video, audio, and so much more via our bi-weekly Elul Unbound email list, and connect with other Judaism Unbounders committed to making the most of this time period by heading to judaismunbound.com/ELUL2025. That's judaismunbound.com/Elul2025. This is Judaism Unbound, episode 499, Elul 2025, the 13 Attributes of Mercy. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Lex Rofberg.
And I'm Wendie Bernstein-Lash.
And we are overjoyed to be back with you for an episode of Judaism Unbound. As a reminder, Dan is not with us, sadly. He sends his love. But what we have as a special treat is Wendie Bernstein-Lash, who is joining us. She is our annual shepherd of Elul Unbound, which is our on-ramp month initiative into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's a chance to get a little introspective, look inward, and in doing so, experience all sorts of fun treats sent to you via email by our wonderful program associate, Emma Newberry, that help you dive into this month in all of its facets. So that's Elul Unbound. If you have not participated before, we hope that you will. In particular, we hope that you'll participate in our Shabbat gatherings that we do throughout this month via Zoom. Our first one is tonight, if you're listening the day this comes out, on Friday, September 5th. So don't miss it. You can sign up by heading to judaismunbound.com/Elul, that's ELUL, and heading to our Shabbat gatherings area. It's going to be fun. We spend time together in Zoom. We schmooze about where we're at individually this Elul, where we're hoping to get over the course of the rest of this month. We dive into text together. We have great conversations. It's really a beautiful time, so we hope you'll consider that. That's a little bit of a window into Elul Unbound. But for today, we're dwelling in a particular theme, and we've chosen the 13 attributes of mercy. Many of you may know them as that thing in high holiday services where the cantor sings, Adonai, Adonai, Rachum v'chanun, that whole thing. But there are 13 attributes of mercy. They're really fascinating. And Emma, who I mentioned before, who's our program associate, she was really struck by them and saw some potential in the 13 attributes as a theme for a week of Elul Unbound. And so we're going to look at these attributes of mercy and what they can teach us. So Wendie, can you take us in? What are the 13 attributes? And then we can start to unpack together what we might learn from them.
This is the 13 attributes. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum, V'chanun, Erech Apayim, V'rav Chesed, V'emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nose Avon, V'afesha, V'hata'a, V'nakeh. And so what does that mean? It's Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, God, repeated, important when there's emphasis. And another word for God, El, which is about kindness, Rachum, which is mercy, merciful, again, another kind of mercy, Rachum, V'chanun is graciousness, Erech Apayim is slow to anger, V'rav Chesed is great kindness, V'emet, truth, and Notzer Chesed La'alafim, kindness for thousands, for many generations. Nose Avon, forgiving iniquity, forgetting our transgressions. The next one, and transgressions. V'hata'a, and sin, and v'nakeh, and pardoning. So there's a lot there. These come from the Torah, where we see God described in these different ways. And what I think is so beautiful about focusing on this for Elul is instead of getting it's not one time, because I think we actually have it a couple times if you go to all the services, but we don't really focus on this very much, and to take it out and to look at it in Elul and play with it and deepen it and see, why is this important to add in our high holy days, why would this have been put in there? Not that it's not said other times, but this is when most people run into it. It's lovely to have some time to go deep into it.
So I love the way that you broke that down. It is a lot of terms, and we're aware of that. So we'll dwell a little bit in some of them. But yeah, Adonai, Adonai. I mean, that's how it's Yud Hey Vav Hey, Yahweh. It's a name. It's like Wendie or Lex, but we tend to translate it as, Adonai, which, I mean, that's kind of an intra-Hebrew translation because we're nervous about saying God's name directly. And then in English, that's rendered like my Lord. That's not what it says. It's getting at God's name as if it were Wendie or Lex. But you've got that repeated, which you mentioned. It's very clearly sort of crying out, pleading. And the contexts where this comes up in the Torah are very much moments of pleading for mercy, for God to be compassionate. And it's like, it's kind of cute. It's like, hey, God, reminding you, you've got a bunch of characteristics that are pretty nice. And I don't mean nice and like, oh, that's nice. I mean like actually kind-hearted. Like, here's so many of them in case you forgot, because you seem to have an option right now between treating us through the attribute of judgment, treating us harshly, or treating us through your attributes of mercy. And we'd like you to be merciful. So, hey, God, reminder. And so we're saying, hey, God, all of these notions of God being patient, so slow to anger, having tons, overflowing, abundant loving kindness. That's Rav Chesed. Rav is a word for just a lot of. So a lot of kindness. And then the closing ones are, you forgive our sins and our transgressions and our mess ups. Like, I'm going with the best Englishes that I can think of, but it's giving all the names in Hebrew for sin and being like, you forgive all of those. Just in case you forgot, because right now we'd kind of like you to do that, given that you could also punish us. And I think it's so glorious that we invoke these as a thematic part of the High Holiday liturgy. And it's also like, I'm cynical about it too, because we've got a liturgy with a God that has attributes of mercy and also has attributes of judgment and harshness. There is a way in which we're doing this almost manipulative thing of being like, you're super merciful. Forget that there's all these other things. Literally in this verse in Exodus, it actually continues beyond what we just read and beyond what the liturgy says. The next thing it says is actually that God also does bring punishment to people sometimes. But we sort of cut off the sentence at vinakeh, at God sort of cleaning up or providing us a pathway towards being pure of our sins, clearing the guilty. I don't know. I feel complicated about that, but I also feel like it's beautiful. All of us have different facets in us, and we're trying on High Holidays to elevate the facets of ourselves that bring goodness to the world and sidebar those that do harm to the world. And so why not focus on God's elements that bring kindness and mercy to humanity, compassion to the world, as opposed to the judgment? So that's a thought I had. Wendie, what do you soak in from these attributes?
I know that for me, when I play with the 13 attributes, whether singing it or saying it, I actually feel like they're coming back at me, like reminding me to be all of these things. If I want to be seen as Tselem Elohim, like there's a part of me that's divine. Tselem Elohim meaning the image of God. If I want to be seen as, looking at my most sacred, divine, best, highest self, this is kind of a list to go ahead. Like, am I still holding judgments towards people? Am I being compassionate towards people? And so I have an orientation of like, okay, it's coming right back at you. And I love the fact, I've never thought about it, of saying, Wendie, I'm going to do that this year. But also, usually most of us are in some kind of community, and it's really hard to completely let go of things that we're holding on to. So it's just a reminder of like, there's a lot of Joes out there. There's a Lexus, there's Wendie, there's other people who are struggling. And can I also send that out to them as well?
That's really beautiful. I really like that. And there's one main context where the whole 13 attributes are said in the Torah, and that's directly after the moment of the golden calf. Aaron has led this either rebellion or attempt to channel holiness into a golden object, however you want to conceptualize that moment. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is not pleased about this, and Moses isn't either, and the people regret what they did. And so they're seeking this forgiveness, and they list all of this out as sort of their hope for how God will treat them. So I do think it's a chance for us to think about our own contributions to the world and mishaps in the world, because that's where this comes from. Yes, we're talking about God, but really we're regretting that we, at least in the opinion of those writing the Torah, fell short in that moment of the golden calf. By the way, I'm being kind of vague here. Like I've talked in the past on the podcast about how, and others, Amichai Lalevi most prominently, have said that like if they were there, they actually would have contributed to the golden calf. That's why I'm saying only some think it's negative. But I think that invitation you're giving is really beautiful. I also want to bring in a teaching from Emma, who I've mentioned a couple times. She mentioned that forgiveness in this context of the golden calf, it's withheld. Like God doesn't only err on the side of forgiveness there. God is very pissed off and expresses that directly. But there is a way in which through this 13 attributes, through this listing, forgiveness becomes a perpetual descriptor of what God is, and in multiple ways. It becomes something that even if God right now is not giving forgiveness, a characteristic of who God is the idea of bringing forgiveness. And that kind of soaks its way into the entirety of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is all about seeking out divine forgiveness, and also, importantly for what you just said, seeking out forgiveness from one another, which maybe for some of us is actually one and the same if we see God as the sum total of all humanity and all existence. And so it's very powerful what Emma's saying, that forgiveness being named here as something God is and does makes it sort of always operative. It's a way of saying like God sort of understands as a feature, not a bug, that we're going to mess up, and that's fine. Like that's part of the system. That's not us fundamentally straying from the system. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and you may know the actual reference to this, but so the Talmud says that Teshuvah was created before the creation of everything. And I love that. It's
Teshuvah being that process of turning and repenting.
Right.
And,
turning, returning, forgiveness, atonement. And that's exactly what we're doing in Elul, and that's what we're doing in the High Holy Days. So to think that there was like this sense of like you're gonna be imperfect, you're gonna mess up, you're gonna miss the mark. There's a process. I also know what really spoke to me. I think it was the Forgiveness Project that I heard this, but I was listening to somebody who was speaking about we have a tendency to mark people with their worst behavior. Okay, you were a this, you were a that, and forget about the rest of who they are. And that the forgiveness is saying, okay, that was your worst moment, but I'm not going to define you by that worst moment. And I think that's a beautiful concept to think about this. This came right after what's considered like the worst of the worst that we did in the Torah.
Right. And another place that it comes up, or at least half of it, interestingly, we sort of get the second half of the 13 attributes in the book of Numbers, right after the 12 spies have their whole escapade. And 10 of them say, like, we should not go into this land. And 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, say we should. And again, there's this plea for divine mercy because the brunt of the people, 10 of the 12 tribes, were on the side there of not trusting enough in God, not trusting in God's ability to bring them in to this promised land, not trusting that they'd be able to surmount the obstacles and the people that they need to go to war with to successfully live there. Another part of the text that many of us look at through different lenses than perhaps the authors did. And maybe we like the fact that 10 of the 12 tribes didn't want to go to war with the inhabitants of the land. But we see that latter half, and it makes me kind of want to hone in on the structure of these 13, because I don't think it's an accident, and I think it actually relates to something we're going to talk about next week with the Shemitah cycle, with the flow of time, where we're entering into our 4th of 7 years. The 4th, if you were sort of drawing it visually, in a lot of Jewish contexts, the 4th out of 7 is kind of marked as the median, as the elevated, important middle. You see this in the Shabbat Amidah and the prayers we say on Shabbat, where the middle one is the one about Shabbat itself. And so we're entering into a year that is like that. It's the fourth out of 7, and we can see it as a kind of majestic, elevated year. The top of the pyramid, if we were to draw it out as like stepping up once each year and then down to get back to the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1 kind of deal. 13, if you were to draw that step scale thing, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm like showing visually my hands going up a stairs. You can't see me doing that. And then you go back down once you're at 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's 13 steps. And so what we would glean from that is that the 7th in this series is of particular importance. And if we count them out, now there's different ways of counting these attributes, but there is one most common way. And if you count the most common way, number 1 is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Number 2 is also Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. We repeat, we embody the slowness, the patience that we're talking about later by saying God's name twice. Then El, which is, like you said, another name for God. Rachum, the compassionate one or merciful one. Chanun, also compassionate one or merciful one with a different word. Erech Apayim, slow to anger. And then the 7th, V'rav Chesed. The top of this pyramid is that God is abundantly kind, abundantly gracious. There's different ways to translate chesed, but basically, whatever ways we translate chesed, God has a lot of it. Rav, it's from the root of harbeh, which means many or much. A lot of kindness, which is interesting because there's a lot of moments where that's not what we see from God. But apparently, according to this text, God has in potential just an overflowing and abundant amount of kindness. But what's interesting about it is we can do a little bit of a play here because Rav is not only a word for much, it's a word in Hebrew for rabbi. We call somebody Rav if they are rabbi. And so you could say Rav Chesed, like God is sort of rabbi of kindness, rabbi of Chesed, which gets to what you were saying, like teacher, rabbi as teacher, Rav as somebody who has students and teaches. It becomes something that we can learn from, not just, oh, God's kind, we're whatever. Like there is a way in which this is kind of a Jewish, what would Jesus do? Like we don't have a what would Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh do or what would Moses do in most direct ways. I think there's uses for that spiritual modality sometimes, even as I don't believe in a personified version of divinity. And so God is a lot of chesed or rabbi of chesed. And I think that when we hear it that way, there's a tendency to translate things very formally. We don't translate the Bible with like, God's got a bunch of chesed or a bunch of kindness, overflowing, abundant with kindness. We give it this kind of fancy language, but in a context where the Jewish people are really pleading for mercy, it's like, you're so much kindness. Please remember that. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Elul and the lead up to it is an opportunity to strive towards Rav Chesed. And it's not that we have to stop there. It's not that, oh, we gotta, forgive everything no matter what. That's not what this season is about. We still can hold that there's certain forms of harm in the world that are not reversible, that are not slight, that we need to not just sort of, oh, that's gone, it's fine, wipe the slate clean. And when there is a chance to do so authentically without compromising our values, erring on that side of chesed is powerful.
Yeah. When I think about the going up the stairs and coming down, there's a lot of work to go up, and then the coming down is maybe a slide down, maybe it's but the sense of how we do both. We have times where we're putting in a lot of effort. We have times where we're backing off. This is just kind of life. We have times where we feel like we are in the heart of it. And I think of it as in the heart, in the middle. And I'm actually pointing to my chest right here. And another place where the heart of it comes out is if you look at the Sephirotic, the Kabbalistic tree of life, where you take these attributes, supposedly divine attributes, and you see how if you map them onto the body, the middle, there's one right in the heart center, and that is Tiferet, which sometimes is translated as beauty or balance. But this heart place that we want to land in there. it really feels like we're being drawn into what's at the heart of this season, what's at the heart of what we should be doing, and it is also surrounded by things like being slow to anger and being truthful. And so kind of thinking about it is, what's in the heart for us? What's in that central place that we can fall back into when maybe we are off or somebody else has been off and we want to come back. And I just love that, thinking about this time is like going into the middle of the middle.
Absolutely. What a great note for us to close on. We're going to go into that more next week when we talk about the Shemitah cycle, but we are entering into the middle year, the fourth year of this 7-year flow. And so holding that top of the staircase moment as we ascend and then descend over 7 years, or perhaps ascend and then descend over the course of the 10 days of the high holidays, or perhaps ascend and descend from the beginning of Elul till Yom Kippur, however you want to conceptualize the start and ending point of the journey. There's value in seeing us firmly in the middle. We tend to give much more love to beginnings and endings, Jewishly and otherwise. In a lot of trilogies of movies, the first one and the last one are the ones that people talk about the most and remember the most. I recently did a rewatch of Lord of the Rings, and I feel like people like, oh, Fellowship of the Ring, that's like how it started. And Return of the King, oh, that won the Academy Award, and it's the last one, and that's where the story wraps up. The second one, when I rewatched, I actually was like, I think this is the best one. You come at me if you disagree. That's something we can totally discuss this high holiday season. Let's hold that middle. Let's hold those associations of patience that go with the middle. So like not racing to be in beginning and then end, but rather holding that moment at the top of the staircase. When we're on staircases, we tend to be either going down them or going up them. We don't like pause on the landing. Maybe I'll do that as a spiritual practice this Elul, like stop at the top of the stairs and pause before walking down. I'll try it out and let you know how it goes. But we're so grateful to share this month with all of you. And like we said at the top, we hope that we can see you at our first Shabbat gathering tonight. We'll be gathering in Zoom, and you can sign up and get the link by heading to judaismunbound.com/ELUL. In general, we hope that you'll experiment and be creative with what this month can be for you. We offer all sorts of different modalities through email, where we send all sorts of cool resources and audio and video, and we hope that you're enjoying those so far. But it's really an invitation for you to craft your own experiences as well. So let us know how that's going. You can be in touch with us by sending an email to elul@judaismunbound.com, and we hope that you'll do so. So thanks for all the different forms of engagement you're giving us this month of Elul, and with that, this has been Judaism Unbound.